Hey guys, Daniel here. This is another video. My next guest, he needs no introduction. In my opinion, he's one of the greatest comic book artists of all time, and quite frankly, he's one of my heroes. It's the legendary Frank Quitely. He's a comic book artist known for his work on so many hit series. Just to name a couple, I've right here: All Star Superman. He's gotten to work on stuff like Batman. He did Jupiter's Legacy with Mark Miller, which was recently adapted into a Netflix show. He's gotten to work on other stuff like Sandman, The Authority, Pax Americana, the X-Men, the new X-Men, WE3, Flex Mentallo, the Justice League of America, and so much more. And yeah, all it took was a bunch of blackmail to get Frank to come on. But Frank, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
Very good, thanks, Daniel. Very good.
Normally, I'd start off with some banter about how the weather's great, but you're not American, so you're in Scotland, which I'm sure the weather is still incredibly rainy and very dark outside. Am I correct in saying so?
We've actually got snow just now in Glasgow.
No
Yeah.
way. We had snow earlier today, but it didn't stick. And of course, I was stuck in school, so it didn't really make a difference.
Ours is lying everywhere, so it looks pretty good.
Does it? Yeah, I'm sure beautiful for an artist. Yeah, so many different things I wanted to discuss. First off, let me just get like straight into comics in general. But how did you get into comics? What was that first memory or that first interaction with comics you've ever had?
Well, like as a child.
Yeah, as a child. A million years ago. No, yes. Let me pull you back.
I think probably it would be the Bruins and Oor Willie in the Sunday Post. So that's two Sunday newspaper strips. And that was probably my earliest comic interactions. And then after that, there's a bunch of comics that were common in Scotland, like the Beano and the Beezer, the Dandy, the Bullet, Warlord, all that kind of stuff. And then in my teens, I kind of fell away from comics in my teens, but I was still always into Mad Magazine and eerie and creepy and sinister tales and weird science and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you were never into the Marvel and DC stuff as a child, no? You were more into the
I had a very small kind of connection with Marvel and DC. The guy across the road, he was a kid that was a couple of years older than me, Sean Wilkie, and he had a bunch of Marvel and DC comics. He had some X-Men and some Conan, and I had a Super Friends album.
Wow.
It was like a British reprint of Superman and Batman and Robin and stuff. So I mean, like, it must have been in total, it must have been just a few hundred pages, but it was stuff that I read and reread. But that was probably as much Marvel and DC as I saw.
Yeah.
And also I wasn't exposed to 2000 AD.
Oh no.
Either. So it was really, in my teens, it was really Mad Magazine and the black and white reprints of those American short stories. That was really what I thought of as comic books. And also another small influence, a small but significant, was I had a couple of foreign holidays in France and Spain when I was a teenager. Wow. And
that's where Grant Morrison kidnapped you? Was it around there or no?
Oh, Grant was that was before I'd ever been kidnapped by Grant. That was before we'd met.
A simpler time.
Yeah. There was a French comic called Wacky, and it was like a caveman kind of story, and a bit like Conan. And there was a Spanish comic called Simok, which was
John McCrae brought that up when I interviewed him. I was thinking about that the other day. It's comics backwards.
It's comics backwards, and that had some beautiful black and white strips that were amazingly drawn, and it had some fully painted stuff, and it also had some full frontal nudity, which made quite an impression in my young teenage self. And it kind of opened my eyes to a different style of comic. But I didn't really start getting into comics until I had left art school, Glasgow School of Art, and when I started working for Electric Soup, which was an underground humor comic, and that's when I kind of started getting back into comics.
Yeah, absolutely. 1 second. It's funny enough, you spring with Electric Soup. I can't believe it. It's right here. No, but so Electric Soup was your first comic book work. Would I be correct in saying so?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely. And so getting to work and stuff like that, you think that kind of, I imagine, was very influential, and you kind of knew how to work on comic books after that. And like, can you even look back at your work from that era? Or are you like, no, I can't, I can't look at it? Or what's it like for you looking back at some of your Electric Soup work?
Oh, I can look back on it, no problem. But I mean, I look back on it, and I see the work of a young person who didn't know much about comics and had a lot of shortcomings and a lot of limitations.
Yeah.
And that's the way most people start. So, it is what it is. There was two things about working for Electric Soup. One of them was that I was slowly learning how to put comics together.
Oh, really?
And the other thing was that one of the other guys in particular who worked there, half the guys that worked in Electric Soup were into comics, and the other half weren't. They just saw it as an opportunity to kind of maybe make money, maybe do their own thing. But one of the guys, Rob McCallum, who moved to Canada, and he's a storyboarder, works on Star Trek and all sorts of things. I mean, he works on loads of big Hollywood movies. But Rob was he was really into his comics, and he showed me a bunch of comics that he really rated. And there was also John McShane, who was a guy that owned the local comic shop that was nearest to where we did Electric Soup.
Yeah.
And between these two guys, they showed me like Mobius and Katsuhiro Otomo.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And Mike Mignola and Dave Gibbons and Jeff Darrow, and like just all the creators, the Hernandez brothers, all the guys that they thought were doing good, interesting work. Grant Morrison, Alan Moore, it was like a real, like, over a couple of years, I got introduced to most of the artists and writers that most people would consider to be at the top of their game or the most influential ones. And so it was a real eye-opener for me, that period working in Electric Soup.
And definitely getting to work on that. I know that, believe it or not, Frank Whiteley, this may come as a shock to everyone, that's not your real name. It's something of an alias, a superhero name, if you will. So yeah, is Electric Soup how you came up with that name, Frank Whiteley?
Yeah, and again, there was two reasons for that. One of them was because it was a comedy comic, and I thought it seemed like a funny idea. Some of the other guys were taking on different names because they had jobs and they were paying tax, and we were all hoping it was going to make money, and it didn't make money. But for me, like I knew my parents wouldn't have liked it,
Oh yeah.
And it was quite convenient for me to hide behind a phony name. And obviously Frank Whiteley is a spoonerism of quite frankly, so the idea that it was, I had made up a stupid name that meant to be honest. And it just the irony of it was it seemed to suit, like a comedy comic.
And so that's just stuck. Like from now, you're kind of known as Frank Whiteley. And so is it nice for you to kind of have those kind of two versions, like to your friends and family, you're Vince, and then to the comic book community, you're Frank Whiteley? Is that nice for you? Must be weird.
Do you know, it's I don't really think about it now, but occasionally my kids will call me Frank when they're being sarcastic. But
lovely.
But I like when I'm at a convention or something and people are calling me Frank, I feel like Frank now,
Yeah.
but when I started out, like in my earliest years when I would go to comic book conventions, people would call me Frank, and like it felt really odd, because it wasn't my name.
Yeah, definitely. And so, coming off Electric Soup, was it after Electric Soup that like 2000 AD came up? Because, you just said as a child, you didn't really get much 2000 AD. And so did 2000 AD come to you after seeing your work in Electric Soup, or how did that even come about?
When I was working for Electric Soup, a number of different people suggested that I should draw some sample pages and send them off to publishers.
Yeah.
And I did. And most of the publishers didn't get back to me. A few did. And the ones that did sent me letters just saying, this isn't the kind of work we're looking for. And Steve McManus at 2000 AD.
Yeah.
Steve McManus, he was interested, and he sent me a script and asked me to do a couple of pages from it, and I did. And then he got back to me and said, this is great, but unfortunately, I'm not in a position to commission any more work just now, but I've passed your samples over to David Bishop at the magazine. And David Bishop then sent me a script and asked me to do 3 pages from that. and I did. And when I sent the 3, in fairness to Dave Bishop, I sent the 3 pages into him, and it wasn't getting paid for this, of course. And he liked what I'd done, and he said, I'll send you a 7-page script.
A lot of scripts just to get into it.
No, this was a commission.
This was like your paid script.
Yeah, this was my first Missionary Man script. Yeah. And he said, if I like what you do, I'll give you another one. But he said, spend as long as you want doing it.
Yeah.
And give it to me when you're happy with it. And be honest about how long it took you, because then we can schedule, future work. And I worked round the clock. I mean, like,
really, like
crazy hours. I was working like 18, 20 hours a day. And I managed to do 7 pages. It was fully painted. And I was
fully painted.
Fully painted. Now, I was totally inexperienced. But it took me, I was doing nearly 2 pages a week. So it took me about 4 weeks to do the 7 pages. And I was honest about it. And he said, that's okay. He said, I'll send you. He said, do you want another script? And I was like, yeah. So
yeah, tough one, yeah.
Sent me. This was Gordon Rennie that was writing the scripts. So he sent me another 7-page script, and I did that. And then he sent me a 42-page script.
And I can't.
And it just went on like that.
How many months did that 42-page script take you? No sleep, I imagine.
I don't know. I mean, I was aiming at 2 pages a week, so
it's not bad.
Funnily enough, I never really get any faster.
No, not faster.
No. Even when I started working in black and white for the Americans, and somebody else was coloring it, I was just spending longer on the storytelling, and then eventually I ended up just doing pencils on some Authority and X-Men stuff. Oh, yeah. But I was spending so long doing the pencils because somebody else was inking that I was still only doing 2 pages a week. So it seems to be some kind of sticking point that I can't get past.
Well, it's better than nothing. I suppose you could say that. Yeah, absolutely. And so then what was your first kind of break into DC or Marvel? What was that first comic you had to do for either DC or Marvel?
When I was working for the magazine, an editor called Andy Helfer got in touch. And he was one of the guys that I'd sent samples to. And Andy was working for Paradox Press, and that was an imprint of DC Comics, and they did the big books. So they did the big book of Death, the big book of Urban Legends, the big book of Conspiracies. And they were kind of thick coffee table books at a couple of 100 pages, and they were all short black and white stories. So I did a few of them, and then and then I got offered Flex Mentallo.
I'm so glad you said. For a second there, I thought I got my research wrong, and that wasn't your first DC work. So I was like, please say Flex Mentallo. Please just say Flex Mentallo.
Yeah,
So
well,
that was it.
Yeah,
that was your first.
And this was also the first time I had worked with Grant, which was significant for me.
And he wouldn't give you your family back unless you actually did a good job. I believe that's how it worked.
That's exactly how it worked.
And you got your family back, so we're all happy, you know.
You've interviewed them, so you know the answers to these ones.
I'm waiting for my family back. It'll be soon, though. He said it'll be soon. They said I'll get it back.
Yeah. So
anyway, Flex Mentallo. What was it like getting to work on that? That was your first break into like DC. So did you feel like, oh man, like I have to get this right because it's DC I'm working for? Or were you kind of just lackadaisy about like, if I can do 2080, I can do anything? What were your thoughts coming on Flex?
No, I've never been lax about anything really.
No. More sleepless nights.
When it comes to work, I'm fairly uptight. Every job that I've done has been like it's either the biggest job that I've done, or it's the thing I'm most excited about, or it's yet another opportunity to try and improve or to try and do a better job than I've done before. So fortunately I haven't got to the stage yet of feeling like I don't care and I don't need to make an effort. So this was a big deal for me. Not because I really knew much about Grant or much about Vertigo titles. Or much about superheroes. But it was just because I knew Vertigo was a bigger imprint at DC than Paradox was. I knew Grant Morrison had a really good reputation, although I hadn't read any of his work before I started. I think maybe the only thing I'd read was Big Dave, which was
oh yes, Big Dave for 2000 AD. Yeah, brilliant first introduction to Grant's work.
I think, as far as I remember, Big Dave was the first thing of Grant's.
You're like, I want to work with them now. If this is possible, start putting out.
Yeah, but it was just, it was just a step. Well, it was first and foremost, it was a new job. It was a new paying job, and I wanted to do a good job with it. But it was a big step up. It was, it was a Vertigo title, and I'd been working for the British market, and this was me getting into the American market, and and I wanted to do a good job on it. And also, I had met Grant a number of times socially in Glasgow, because Glasgow's a relatively small city.
Yeah,
and like the comics community is relatively small as well, so we all kind of got to know each other, and I liked Grant, so I wanted to do a good job for him for that reason too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so getting to work on a book like this, I think you did a fantastic job there. But getting to work with Grant, I think that like you're just such a fantastic team, and like you look at the work you continue to do. But getting to work on Flex Mentallo on like a specific book like this, was it interesting to you? Because growing up, you were never really a superhero fan, so you got to draw superheroes. Of course, we can see in the middle page there. And so, do you think that getting work with Flex? Because I mean, since Flex, you've done so much more superhero work. Do you think that Flex has shaped your love for superheroes? Would you say, or your appreciation for them?
It certainly helped, yeah.
Getting to draw cool superheroes and getting paid to must have been like, I love superheroes. They're brilliant.
What was nice about it was the fact that most of the superheroes were new and made up, and so I wasn't too bogged down with continuity. But there was lots of times where I had to phone Grant and say, like, I've read the script and you're referencing things I don't understand. And this was before I had the internet.
Oh, really?
So, so I couldn't just Google things if I didn't know what it was. And I had to keep phoning Grant up and asking him what he was talking about.
Like, would he put in references like make this guy look like Superman or something? Like, how does that work?
Well, yeah, one of them was he described a kid that looked like Billy Bateson, and I had no idea who Billy Bateson was. and Grant was just like, just draw a kid in his early teens wearing a black and red stripy jumper like Dennis the Menace. And I was like, all right, okay.
I can do that. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they absolutely. And so, do you think that not knowing these comic book, because I know kind of Grant said a few times that if anything, they thought it made it a better book because you weren't so aware of superheroes. And do you kind of think the same because it didn't look no one looked too much like another comic book character? Do you kind of see that?
Well, I can see that now. I didn't know that at the time, but Grant has since told me on a number of occasions that he saw it as an advantage that I wasn't a dyed in the wool comic fan, because it meant that I was coming from a slightly fresher perspective than somebody who had a great reverence for superheroes. So
Yeah, absolutely. And so did you purposely try to make Flex Mentallo look like the biggest man in the world? No, yes. Like I think he's just so fun. Like he's so huge compared to everyone else. I think it's fantastic. So is that a conscious choice for you to kind of, did Grant describe him as being just this huge muscly figure? And so getting to draw that, was that incredibly fun for you?
Do you know
And the chest hairs, that must have been fun, but the individual chest hairs.
oh yeah, well the chest hairs were a must. But
This is young Frank, so I'm sure you just ripped off your shirt and looked in the mirror for reference. This is just truly you, yeah?
that was me, yeah. That was me. That was me back when I was buff.
Don't be modest. Don't be modest, Frank. You can tell us.
Yeah.
You just thought,
yeah, I mean, I just followed Grant's lead on the script, and did what I could with it. It's and it's funny looking back on it now. There's elements of it that work very well for me, and there's other things not so much.
Yeah, wasn't this recently collected in an edition, or am I wrong in saying that? Was this collected?
Yeah, it was collected in it was a 4-issue miniseries.
Yeah.
And after it came out initially, it wasn't ever reprinted because the Charles Atlas Company had objections to the fact that it was there was references to those Charles Atlas adverts that you used to get in superhero comics, and it was a kind of ongoing court case for quite some time, and then eventually DC won the court case, and at some point after that they decided they were going to collect the 4 issues and bring it out as a trade paperback, and at that point Grant and I both we wanted it recolored because the coloring had been quite different from what we had originally wanted. So
did you hire a different colorist, or were you the colorist, or because I know you some of your own work.
The image on the left there, I colored myself.
Yeah.
The colorist who recolored the 4 issues was Peter Doherty.
Oh yeah, brilliant colorist, yeah.
Who usually colors Jeff Darrow and Shaolin Cowboy, and
you're like, I want him. I want that colorist to do myself. Yeah, but this little image on the left here, was this something you specifically redrew just for the collection, or is this something you drew all the way back with? So this is actually something you only drew recently. It was like getting to return to the character of Flex Mentallo, and those chest hairs never left your mind, I'm sure. You sometimes you wake up in a cold sweat and you just see it.
The one on the left is relatively recent. The one on the right was the original first cover when it came out back in the mid-90s, I think it was, and then the one on the left must have been must have been about 10 years later or something.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I think that first image. But so for covers, this is something we're going to get into towards the end. But so this is the cover for the series, and I just love how everything kind of looks in the comic page. So did you come up with the concept for that cover, or did DC come to you and say do this? Or
no, Grant asked me to draw that, and
all the individual comic book panels we can see across.
Yeah, sometimes Grant, occasionally Grant gives me thumbnails, but only occasionally. On this occasion, he just said he wanted Flex inside a comic book, holding the pages apart, and other comic pages flying around. And he wanted all the comic pages to be suggestive of scenes that were in the comic without actually being absolutely specific. So
was it difficult to draw all the the individual little comic book panels and just the way it's folding and you can see it there? Was that difficult for you?
No, it was time consuming, but it wasn't difficult. and it was very enjoyable as well because I think it was more enjoyable because I went back to it 10 years later.
Yeah.
So I had some kind of...
And you still had the flex
distance.
physique, which helped. You could still just look into the mirror and go, okay, yeah, I know how that looks.
I was starting to get the pot belly by that time, but I still had some of it.
You still had the arms, which is all you really need. You know, that's why we can kind of see the lump on flex. But I think it's a character decision. It's it's your artistic interpretation of what flex would look like. If anything, it's art, metaphor for human greed. We'll call it that. Okay. I'm so good at waffling. So the next thing I'd love to touch on is Batman, the Scottish Connection. And so this is your first Batman work. You got to do some Batman work later with Grant, but this was with Alan Grant. Am I correct in saying so?
Yes, that was Alan Grant.
A fellow Scotsman. But how did this book come about for you?
Alan had been writing Shadow of the Bat for years, and he had been keeping an eye on me because I was a fellow Scot and I was a youngster, and he liked what I was doing. And he had asked on a number of occasions if he could get me to draw one of his Bat stories. And he was constantly told by DC editorial that I wasn't a superhero artist.
Yeah.
I was a Vertigo artist. I was a non-superhero artist. And we actually, before Batman came about, we actually did a Lobo story together. And,
yes, I've heard, yeah.
And it was never published, but they allowed me a stab at a Lobo story. And I don't know if it was because of Flex Mentallo or just because I was slowly getting better at drawing comics, or just because it was a change of editor in the Bat offices. I don't actually know what the reason was, but eventually Alan was allowed to write me a Bat story, and this was the one that he wrote. Scottish Connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just brought up that Lobo story. I think it's fantastic. Sorry, the title slips my mind. Could you tell us all just the title? I think it'd just be great if you could just get it out there. You know, is that, or did you forget it as well? I'm sure you forget it.
It was called The Hand-to-Hand Job.
Yeah, it was.
It was about hand-to-hand combat. I'll say no more about it.
Yes, it was. It's such a good. I'm so sad we never got it. That would have been brilliant. But alas, you know, these things happen. I'm so glad I got to bring that up. Yeah, but so getting to work on Batman, the Scottish Connection, I want to pitch you something. I call it Batman, the Galway Connection. It's a completely original concept. You know, what do you think? Do you think DC, they haven't responded to my emails for some reason, but do you think it's a great idea? Completely original, by the way.
It sounds good to me, yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you draw some of it. He's just in one big field for the whole story. And he's trying. It's like it's so beautiful. No bad guys or anything. It's just a bunch of farmers and cows and stuff.
Is that where you're from, Galway?
No, I'm from here in Dublin. I think Galway just sounds better on the title.
No? Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if anything, I'm from the city, as you would say. No, luckily, but yeah, no.
City boy.
Yes, yeah, which makes it so handy. And you're lucky I don't have a really thick Irish accent, or else you wouldn't understand anything. Actually, no, you're Scottish. Actually, you'll understand it. So,
yeah, no, I'm getting everything you're saying. I've been in Ireland many times.
Oh yeah.
3 out of 4 of my
and you haven't been robbed.
Parents are Irish. You
haven't been robbed in Ireland?
No, certainly not. But
that's great.
But 3 out of 4 of my grandparents are Irish.
Oh wow, really? That's not bad. Yeah. Are they all from Dublin, or where in Ireland do you
No, they're from Dungooley near Dundalk.
Oh yes, that's
and from Fannet Head in Donegal. So I only know 2 of them. I only know 2 out of the 3. Like specifically where they come from in Ireland. But yeah, I mean, I've been in Ireland many times.
But once you come back, I'll have to track you down, you know. And I'll let you buy me a pint because I'm generous like that. Yeah, it'd be great, crack.
Go on then.
Yeah. I'm called a Chancellor for a reason. But yeah, Batman, the Scottish Connection. Coming off that, I also want to touch on JLA Earth 2. I love this story. Actually, I read it today while preparing because I was like, oh, I'd love to read this story. And like, I have these individual comics, which I think are from Titan, which are like individual different stories, but all in one, like different story arcs. Like it'd be would be you and Grant's story in one, and then the next page it's like something from Snyder's Batman. So I had to track down all the issues with JLA2, and I was reading it today, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna interview him today. I was like, oh, I'm gonna interview him today. Oh no, I'm so unprepared. Yeah, so JLA2, was this your first graphic novel? I suppose you could say. No, well, yeah, with Flex, or was this your first kind of graphic novel?
Yeah, this came out as an original graphic novel, so it wasn't in individual issues first, whereas Flex was. So yeah, well, actually, the Batman Scottish connection, it was only 64 pages, but it came out as a one shot. So, but this was certainly this when I did this was the highest profile thing that I had done to that point. So.
You must have been nervous getting to work on this, were you? Or
yeah, I mean, it seemed like a big deal. And also there was the added bonus of having Laura Dupuis doing the colouring.
Oh, yeah.
And she made a fantastic job of the colouring. So I was really delighted with that.
Yes, you got to draw these characters. Who was your favorite member of the Justice League to draw? Was it Batman's beautiful little ears, or who was that one member you just enjoyed drawing?
Gosh, I don't know.
All the same to you? Are they all just characters? No, is there even a favorite, or do you just enjoy getting to draw them all equally?
No, I don't know. I don't know if I had a favorite.
Asking the hard-hitting questions. I mean, they all have such iconic looks to them, and so yeah, I love the design session. There's some more fantastic pages here, and like getting to work on Batman again. Brilliant. But yeah, so getting to work on like Justice League this was with Grant again, and so it was like getting to work with. Did he request you for this book, or what happened there?
I hope so. I mean, that was a story I was told. Maybe there's three other artists that turned it down first that are sitting laughing at this. But yeah, he said he wanted me to draw it, and he sent me the script, and I loved it, and it. Something that was slightly different about this from the way I normally work is the editor, Dan Raspler, asked me to send and this was in the days of fax machines. He asked me to fax.
What's a fax machine? What? No, I mean, that's what's this?
He asked me to send a very rough layout of each page before I drew it, just so that he could check how the storytelling was going. And because I had to do everything really, really simply and send it over, it was a big learning curve for me on how I do visual storytelling. So it was quite a learning experience. It was one of those rare experiences that I've had where I worked with an editor and felt really quite enriched after the experience, like I'd really learned something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, are you a perfectionist in your work? Because I know you thought like you're not very lackadaisy, but do you look at this and say, no, it's not good enough, or I have to do this? Or are you a perfectionist, or can you kind of settle for what you think is good enough?
Ultimately, you need to settle because you need to let go of the pages. But on nearly every job I've done, I've spent longer than was financially worth it to spend. Yeah. I've always spent longer than was wise. And to some extent, nothing's ever quite good enough. There's nothing I couldn't go back now and redo and not do better. I haven't done anything I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. So, and I think that's quite common. There's a lot of artists that I know that feel that way. They look at their own work and they know that it's good enough and they know that it tells a story. But if they could draw it again, they would definitely do it better because they've learned more, or because they would know not to make the mistakes they made the first time.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. I don't know how you can look at one of your pages and like just see critique. I don't know how you can do that. And obviously, I think I'm gonna be very humble here and say I think you're a bit of a better artist than me. I have done some great Christmas cards, but I'm gonna have to just let you have this one. But no, yeah, and it amazes me how like artists can look at some of their work and say, no, I see problems with that, when you can put out some brilliant stuff like this. And but yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just such a fascinating thing, like how artists just automatically tend to just criticize their work, no matter how good it may be or how much maybe if other people like it. And so let me ask you, receiving praise, is it nicer when other creators give you praise as opposed to like just regular comic book fans? Surely it is a bit nicer getting to hear from a comic book creator.
It's different when another artist gives you praise. It means something because they do the same thing that you do, and they know what's involved in trying to make pages, and they have an artistic talent and an artistic vision, which in some ways makes their opinion or their compliment mean more. But when fans tell you that they like your work simply because they like it, or simply because you drew one of the stories that was their favorite character, or because they read it when they were 12, or they read it when they were feeling low and it lifted them up, or whatever, it's difficult to compete with that. That's a privilege of the job when you meet people who've engaged with your work and it's really meant something to them. That's quite something.
Yeah, I know your work has definitely done that, and we're going to be getting into that a bit. But yeah, so coming off that, WE3, one of your most famous books, which I love so much, and I think it's such a ridiculous concept, but it's executed so perfectly. For anyone that doesn't know, it's about three robot talking animals who are badass, and I love them all. But yeah, so how did this book come about? I'm really fascinated in this. Did Grant come to you with this, or?
Yeah.
And so what was your initial reaction upon hearing this premise? What was your first thought?
I'm getting the feeling that you already know what my initial reaction was.
Really?
Yeah.
On, tell us all.
Grant got in touch and said that he had a bunch of creator-owned properties that he had, ideas that he'd come up with, and he was looking for artists to work with, and he wanted me to do one of them. And the one that he most wanted me to do was called WE3. And I said, what's it about? And he said, it's about a cat and a dog and a rabbit. And the military's made them, they've kind of weaponized them. They wear suits of armor. And I just presumed he was joking. And as the conversation went on, it became more apparent that he was being serious. And initially, I thought it sounded like a pretty bad idea. And the more he talked about it, the more I started seeing the potential in it. And by the time he had finished telling me what the story was, I was on board. And once I started trying to work on the designs for the armor, that brought me further on board. And then when he started telling me about how he wanted to explore experimental kind of
panel techniques. Work.
In storytelling.
You can see that here,
That was kind of clincher, and it was a lot of work, but it was a joy to work on, and I look back on it very fondly. I'm really glad that he talked me into doing it.
So typical of you and Grant to do something like this and make it a perfect book. That's so typical. And you can just come up with, but yeah, so panel work, you just brought up there a new type of panel concepts. Were you kind of experimental with this? And I imagine some of it was rather difficult to draw, or was it just time consuming, like you said? But like this page right here, was this must have been just a bit difficult for you to draw, or was it just time consuming?
It was certainly time consuming, but it was actually difficult to come up with the idea in the first place. And to be honest, if Grant had just given me a script and told me to get on with it, I wouldn't have come up with this. The fact is, he gave me a script and there was some pages missing. And the pages that were missing, these were two of them, where he wanted to sit and talk to me about the idea that there must be a way of showing the cat moving through a crowd of soldiers, killing them, where we're seeing slices of time, where we feel that we're seeing things in a different kind of way. And we got together and we spent a fair amount of time together on a number of different occasions, sitting, talking about this, and me drawing things and Grant saying, no, that's not good enough. That's not different enough. Give me something new. Give me something I've not seen before. And he just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and
he's a genius.
And, between the two of us, we ended up coming up with this, where you turn the comic panels through 90 degrees, so you're looking at them in perspective, so that the cat that's moving through them seems to be going through doors or windows or whatever. So I'd like to take the full credit myself, but it was actually very much a joint effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if ever in the future we get the opportunity to put our animals in suits of armor, I'm absolutely going to do that, because it's badass to have a robot animal. I think that just speaks for itself. So I guess we can kind of thank you for that. But these 3 pages, can you see them here? I know, inconvenient. If only there was some book where you went into detail about the troubles of these 3 pages. That'd be so great. Conveniently enough, we have it right here. It's Frank Whiteley drawing plus sketches, which is published from BHP Comics. I picked this up at Big Bang Comics, and there's some other Irish comic stores, so there's Dublin City Comics, Sub City Comics, and more. You should go pick this up. You can get this again from BHP Comics. I believe you can get it online, and I highly recommend. Frank goes into detail in a few of his pages right here. Sorry, what were we talking about? No, yes, but the CCTV page here. So for anyone that doesn't know, halfway through the story in WE3, they're looking at all these different pages through, the perspective of a camera. And did you struggle with this page a lot?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Don't get them started. We'll be here all day.
there was 6 of these pages that had 18 panels a page, and the whole story unfolds almost wordlessly, and it's told from the perspective of a number of different CCTV cameras around the building, and it proved really complicated to choreograph. So I had each of these panels cut up individually. That's them there. And I kept them in a raisin box, and my wife threw the raisin box in the bin, thinking it was just an old raisin box, not realizing that I had
the chosen raisin box.
Weeks worth of work hiding in it. But I had an exhibition in Kelvin Grove Art Gallery and Museum in Glasgow, and they had all the 100 and whatever it was cut up pieces of paper in a glass vitrine, and to show how it was all put together. It seems absurdly complicated way of working, and I've said before that I don't get paid for working things out. I only actually get paid for the pages I draw, and I spent fully 2 weeks working out this sequence.
2 weeks
before actually starting to draw the pages, so it was just like 2 weeks of work for nothing, just to trying to get this sequence to work right, but so yeah, I'm not a perfectionist, but I do what I have to do to get it to work for me.
And so 3 18 panel pages, we can't say that you don't put in the work.
18 panel pages.
6 18. Oh wow, that must have been so much fun getting to do that. And so just looking at it there, I don't even know how you can do something like that. But looking back at WE3, certainly you must be proud of the work that you and Grant did, just looking back at some stuff like this. Yeah,
mostly. Yeah. I mean, like most artists, I see the mistakes as well as the good parts. So,
I think that's fantastic. Yeah. I can't get over these pages. And so, we see in a few pages just with the lettering as well, save security codes for animal restraint locks. It's probably a stupid question, but did you draw out, or was this the letterer that did stuff like that?
On these particular pages, that was a letterer, Jamie Grant, who
Oh,
that
and
back together.
colorist on All Star Superman. I didn't know he was letterist as well. Yeah.
He was the colorist on WE3 as well as All Star Superman, but on these particular pages, because the lettering was included in the artwork, Jamie put that stuff in.
Oh wow. Yeah, I think these pages are just brilliant there. But yeah, everyone, if this does not convince you to pick up WE3, I don't know what will. But some more brilliant action pages there, and getting to come up with new panel work. You know, how fun was it getting to come up with all these new concepts that you like? You know, kind of changed up the game of comics. Was that fun for you getting to come up, or was it also kind of time consuming as well?
Both. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed working in WE3.
Yeah, drawing cats in armor. Like, what better job can you have than that? Robot cats that kill people is sick. I think that's just a great comic book. And so yeah, getting to work with that, especially on Grant, like, and so what's that comic that you think is the definitive Frank Whiteley comic? Because I asked this of a few creators, but what's that? Is it WE3, or is there any comic in particular that you think is just maybe not your favorite, but just the definitive Frank Whiteley comic?
No, I think WE3 and Pax Americana are both good examples of experimental storytelling. Sandman Endless Nights is a good example of like fully painted work. All-Star Superman is a good example of a comic that I drew where it was the story itself that seemed to engage with people. So I don't think there is a definitive as such.
No. Oh, I don't blame you. I think you've just done so much that, like, you know, anything. And of course, The Irish Connection will obviously be your most famous book. Like, we have that in the bag, you know. Yeah, we'll come up with an original title, the hand to foot job, something like that. I don't know. We'll come up with it later. We'll do it all in preprint. But yeah, absolutely. And so the next book I want to touch on is The Authority, which you got to do with your nemesis, Mark Miller. Am I correct in saying so?
I'd hardly call him my nemesis.
Don't be proud. We know he's your nemesis. It's okay. No, that's the brilliant Mark Miller. Yeah, you got to do this book. But so how did The Authority come about? You know, how did that come about to you?
I had been reading The Authority when Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch were doing it.
This is a DC title. Am I correct in saying so?
Yeah, it was Wildstorm. Wildstorm were I think they were part of DC at the time, but it was one of my favorite comics. I really loved it, and because it felt quite different from regular superhero titles. And it's my understanding that Mark really loved it as well. And I don't know how it came about that Mark was offered the writing gig.
Oh yeah.
But the way I heard it was that he spoke to Grant about it, and Grant had said to him, you know, don't do this unless you've got an artist who can carry your story convincingly. And
once everyone said no, he said, "Alas, Frank." Is that happening? Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Third choice again.
Yeah, for this interview, I wanted 3 other creators, but just no one would do it. I was like, fine, I guess I'll do Frank.
Always a bridesmaid.
Yeah.
But the way I heard it, Grant suggested to Mark that I would be a good choice for doing it. But this was the first time Mark and I had worked together, and we did talk about it before we started, and we knew that it was whatever we did was likely to be unpopular, because when I had been reading it and it was Warren and Brian who were doing it, I was really enjoying it, and it felt like their comic. It felt like their thing. Nobody had been doing it before them. And if it had been announced that this writer and that artist were going to be taken over after the first year, I feel like I would have kind of felt like, it's not going to be as good, you know? So we both knew we were up against that, and we just decided that we were just going to have to take that in the chin and do our own thing with it.
And did you receive much controversy at time of doing it, or was it kind of just not much?
Um,
I mean, you're off social media, so you probably didn't even get the worst of it. That must have been great for you.
yeah, I was. I think I might have. I think I might have started dabbling in the internet at that point, but
Very bad
I
time.
certainly wasn't. I wasn't. I didn't keep an eye on things. I wasn't particularly engaged. But I think it was a mixed bag. The initial reactions, I think some people were like, "Yeah, this is okay, but it's not as good as it was," and other people were like, "Oh, it's better than I thought it was going to be." You know, people accepted it more the more we did it.
Yeah.
And again, people have accepted it more as time has gone by. But I think you can't really go into things like this worrying too much about what people are going to think, or you would just be paralyzed and not do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And so another thing, I know that despite being published under DC, this was not a kid's book by any means. Like you got away with a lot of gory stuff. Like we can see in the first panel here, he's literally getting his face punched off him, which is brilliant. But so are you kind of squeamish about drawing these type of things, like bloody stuff? No, not at all, because I know some artists are. But are you just not squeamish at all? It's completely fine for you.
No, it's a drawing. It's like, I mean, you can.
Did you go beat up someone just for reference for that last image?
Of course,
Yeah,
yeah.
like a true. You used your flex mentallo muscles and just started punching people on the streets.
That's it, yeah.
And then for the final page, I assume you threw someone very, very hard through someone's head just to get it like that. And I love the little blur effect there. But yeah, so
yeah. Well, that was DC doing a little bit of gentle censoring.
Yeah, I can definitely. And so yeah, that's another one to start on censoring. Wasn't some of this kind of censored up a little bit, or were you kind of different? Yeah,
some of it was. Some of it was. The book didn't have a rating on it. It wasn't recommended for mature readers, and I think there were some people at DC who felt it was a little bit too graphic for a book that wasn't recommended for mature readers. Personally, I think that's. I think kids love this kind of thing,
Yeah, it's great stuff.
I've got a vague memory of being a kid myself one day, and I loved this kind of thing. So
yeah, you'd look at the caveman drawings and you'd see the little sketches. It was yes.
But yeah, so there was a little bit of censoring.
Yeah, and so coming on after Brian, did you feel a certain sense of, I don't know, I guess you could say pressure, because it's like there have been creators before you, so you kind of felt like you kind of had to, in honor of them, get some of this right, or did you feel any type of pressure, or was there not much? Or
yeah, sure. I mean, Brian did a fantastic job when he did The Authority, and like between Brian and Warren, both the art and the writing felt very fresh. It did feel. The Authority, for the first 12 issues, when the two of them were doing it, it felt significantly different from pretty much every other book that was out there at the time, at least that I was seeing.
Yeah.
And I was very aware of that, Brian, fortunately, has got a kind of different style from me. And so I didn't feel like I was competing with Brian in terms of like artistically, in terms of style, but I felt that Brian had given the book a kind of a fairly mature feel and a fairly cinematic feel that was refreshing, and I felt that I had to at least address that. I had to try and keep something of the scale, something of the grandeur, something of the pace and the action.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, I think it would be a wrong approach if you go into a book and you feel you're competing with the previous artist. I think you're approaching it wrong if you feel you're in competition. I think you have to be either just doing your own thing, or you have to be recognizing what the previous artist has done and trying to build on that,
Yeah, definitely. I think you just put it perfectly down. I think your work in authority is fantastic. We can see in the final page, that obviously you could have a bit of fun with this book. Both of his legs are chopped off and he's bleeding out on a bunch of buildings. And it doesn't get much cooler than that, definitely, in terms of comic books. But another thing I want to touch on, just, maybe not in regards to the authority, but just in comic books. In 2011, and I definitely didn't copy all of this from Wikipedia, but at Kapow conventions, there was this Guinness World Record for the fastest production of a comic book. And it was you, Mark Miller, like John Romita, John McCrae as well, and a few other people. And it was for the benefit of the Yorkhill Children Foundation. I will link that down in the description, everyone. But so, yeah, what can you tell us about that fateful day where you produced like the fastest comic book, I think, in the world, the fastest production of a comic book in 11 hours, 19 minutes and 38 seconds. And you were that one. It could have been 37, but you took a second longer.
Well, that was one of my prouder moments. I've
didn't take you 2 days for that page.
I've got a bit of a reputation for missing deadlines, and Mark had set this thing up where he had written the script, and Laniel Francis Yu had done the cover, or maybe he did the cover on the day, I can't remember, and then all these different artists had to draw one panel each, and then the whole thing was put together and lettered. And the idea was that it would be the fastest produced comic ever. And so everybody that was involved, and I don't know what the final number of artists, I don't know what the number was, but there was a lot of us involved, and for whatever reason, it was myself and Dave Gibbons that were chosen to go and accept the award. And,
wow, you got to accept the actual Guinness. You're like, I'd like to take full credit for this. All me. I stand by everything I've done.
I did take full credit.
I do the exact same.
Over Christmas and New Year, my wife and I were doing a bit of early spring cleaning, and I actually found the Guinness Book of Records thing. It's in a
you have frame. It?
Yeah, it was in a wardrobe upstairs, and so it's in my studio now.
You'd get some bob for that. You just sell it. You can keep it for the sentimental value. Here's get it signed by Mark Miller, and we'd pay extra for it. Obviously,
that's true. I should get it signed. Yeah.
I assume he's in your attic. When I interviewed Grant, I asked him, is Frank quietly in your basement? And he said, yeah, I'm taking care of him. He's sick. And I was like, okay.
This is Grant's basement. This is how posh Grant's basement is. Yeah. Everybody else's basement's like damp bricks.
Why did Grant have to be so rich? Yeah. He even charged me for the interview, which was very weird. I had to roll out a red carpet. I can't even afford a red carpet, but I'll let it slide because it's Grant Morrison.
That's a different level. Grant and I are at. He's charging you for the interview, and I'm paying you for the interview.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I like to help out the smaller guys. You've only gotten to do Batman, Superman, all of this stuff. My problem is that I'm too humble and I'm too kind. What can I say? I didn't ask to be born this beautiful. But moving on, I also want to touch on the new X-Men. And so, speaking of freaks like myself, the new X-Men, a fantastic series. You left the Authority to work on this. Am I correct in saying so?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark was just annoying you too much. It's okay. No, listen. But yes, getting to work in the new X-Men, what was it like getting to work in these characters? Because I think when you say the X-Men, it's synonymous with every single, the majority of comic book fans in the world at least know what the X-Men are. What was it like getting to work in these characters? And this was your first Marvel work as well.
Yeah. It was quite a treat. I mean, back when I was doing Electric Soup, we used to make jokes about someday we'll be drawing the X-Men. It was just just because it was a top selling thing, and eventually, and a number of times actually over the years when I was working with Grant, like on Flex or JLA or whatever. Every now and again, I'd say, Grant, when are you going to write me an X-Men story? And again, it was just because I wanted something that would get me royalties, and And he would always just say, I've not got an X-Men story to tell, you know? And then eventually he came to me, he's like that, I'm going to do the X-Men. I know how to do it. I've been thinking about it. I've got X-Men stories to tell. You need to come and like, you know,
Oh yeah.
do the opening story arc, and then whatever else you can find the time for. And
you were like, who's the X-Men? You know,
yeah,
characters.
And we met up like in Glasgow. We always meet up before we do any.
And is
project.
that where he took your family until you finished the series, or was that beforehand?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where he kidnapped them.
The bags over the heads and they're thrown into the van, and then it's Derek Robertson driving it away because I guess he was working on Happy at the time. Because why not? Has to be an accomplice. It all ties together. But yeah, so getting to work in the X-Men with Grant yet again. And so, of course, growing up like as an X-Men, because you've done team books before. Is it different working on team books as opposed to, I don't know, regular books? Because I know it is for writers, but for artists, because, you know, in the back of some panel, you might have to have someone standing there. But is it different working on team books for you?
Team books tend to be a little bit more work just because of the number of characters involved. But, you know, what was nice about it was that the characters that we concentrated on were all very distinct and very different from each other. We've got Wolverine and Cyclops here.
That's another thing I want to bring up. Yeah, the outlines of each character, they look like this is something I've never really seen. This is why you're one of my favorite artists, because like you look at each character and like if you silhouetted them all, I could tell who each character was just because of the way you drew them. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing you can like show in your art. Yeah, I think it's brilliant.
Well, that's an echo of the way the characters are written as well. You know, I mean, like Cyclops is a Boy Scout, you know, and
yes,
and, you know, like Wolverine's like kind of makes his own rules, and you know, and the two of them naturally butt heads because they've got a very different way of going about things. You know, they've got a very different character type, each of them. So the fact that each of the characters has got a distinct look as well as a distinct character type makes the group dynamic work better.
Yeah, and so you got to do the character designs for the X-Men or the new costume designs. So you get to design costumes.
Yeah, I mean, Grant and I talked about this at length before we did it, and Grant had pretty strong ideas about what he wanted, and my idea was that they shouldn't wear costumes at all, because why would you? If you had superpowers, you wouldn't wear a costume.
Yeah. I would. I go out every single day in a costume with my face on it. Every single. Don't like. Of course I will.
Well, that was Grant's thinking as well. He said if he had superpowers, he would definitely have a costume. I know you wouldn't. Nobody would have a costume. But so we ended up settling on something that was partly like kind of action suits and partly like emergency services, because Grant was really big on the idea of the X's being like kind of high visibility emergency services suits. Because effectively the X-Men, on the one hand they were a soap opera set in a school, but on the other hand they were emergency services that went out and rescued young people who were going through a mutation, who were kind of coming out, if you like, in terms of their mutant abilities.
Yeah, and so just looking at this there, I have to point it out. For Wolverine, it says, you know, leave some space on his chest for chest action and dog tags. Flex Mentallo was just like, of course, I assume you just looked in the mirror and you were like that, and then you could just see that, you know, the chest hair sticking out. You're like, okay, that you actually created all the hair that Wolverine had. That came from you. No other artist had came up with it before you worked on it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I've got a thing for chest hair.
Yeah, we've never been. That's a sentence I didn't think I'd hear in this interview, but there you go. I've never, and like, of course, you know, you're rippling muscles. What can you say? You're the most humble person you know. Yeah. So, what would your mutant power be if you were an X-Men? What would your mutant power be?
Oh my goodness.
So many possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, from a work point of view, I wouldn't mind having super speed. That would be really helpful.
That'd be handy. Or what if like you just spit out a page every like minute? That'd be well handy as well. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they wouldn't. They'd be covered in slime and they wouldn't be very good. But It's a page.
They would dry out, I'm sure. Yeah, I could put up with that.
Yeah, let Grant handle it. He'll do all this stuff. Yeah, but some more pages here, and I especially love this first page, which is like, I think, in my opinion, like one of the most iconic X-Men pages, where Wolverine is just at the top, ripping into anything he can, and the robots falling over, and Cyclops is there. But I just had to point out that first page. So is this the first page you got to do for the X-Men?
Yeah, that was the first one. Yeah.
What a page. And so a few more pages, but yeah, getting to work on X-Men with all these different characters. So with your character designs, was it hard for you to draw your own design? Did you try and make it easier for you to draw in any way? Or did you kind of find it fine enough?
No, I go by what's in the script and what I'm asked for, and then try and work it up so that it works for me. And then, if it's complicated, I hope I don't have to draw it too often. But yeah, I mean, I don't generally look for shortcuts.
Yeah, and so were you on after Claremont, was it, or was it Lobdell, or who were you and Grant on after?
Yeah, Claremont and Lobdell were both before Grant and myself.
Yeah, and so did Grant tell you your run might be controversial? I know you mentioned in a few interviews. Did he tell you that, because like looking back, I know how much people love it. Like I always see people saying, New X-Men is the comic to get into comic books. And so, getting to work on it, like, did you kind of suspect it might be controversial at the time? And you were, of course, proven wrong because everyone loved it. But, did you think it was controversial?
To be honest, I didn't give it a huge amount of thought, but Grant did mention on a number of occasions that it was going to be controversial because lots of people who had already been reading the X-Men weren't going to like it because there was going to be big changes. And he was right. Lots of people didn't like it initially.
Oh, really? At the time, people didn't like it? What?
Yeah, it was, well, the thing is, there was lots of people who had been buying and reading the X-Men for years and years, and they were used to a certain type of comic. And the kind of comic that we're used to was very, very grandiose plots. Like they were used to prolonged fight scenes with lots and lots of dialogue, lots of purple prose.
Oh yeah.
It had a kind of operatic scale that people were used to. They were used to splash pages with little inset panels. And what they ended up with when Grant and I took over was a soap opera set in a school, and it was character driven, and a lot of the fan reaction at the time from people who had been reading X-Men for a long time was that Grant and I were a couple of jokers from Vertigo who didn't know how to do a superhero comic.
Oh wow!
And the critics were quicker to get on board with it. But over the years, I mean, over the months while we were working on it, people started coming round to the idea that it actually was quite good and it did actually work. But over the years, it's been better accepted, and it's generally quite highly regarded. But initially, when it came out at first, it was the response to it, particularly from fans more than critics, was very, very mixed. There was a lot of people who didn't like it at first. It was too much of a change.
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine that. Looking back, I think it's one of my favorite X-Men runs. So I can't imagine people didn't like that. But yeah, getting to work in the X-Men, coming off the X-Men, another thing I want to touch on, if I can actually move this slide, is your Sandman 8-pager that Neil Gaiman kidnapped you and your family and forced you to do. Seems to be a lot of getting kidnapped if you want to work in comics. Does it just come with the territory? I don't know.
My family are used to it now.
Yeah, they're just like, great, who is it? Who is it now? They put on their jacket. Oh, hi, Mark. Yeah, the van, it's at the back. Oh, Grant already dropped down. No, I need Frank for my next project. And then it's Civil War. But yeah, no, getting to work on Sandman. How did this come about? Because this is kind of an interesting story, and how they originally contacted the famous artist Mobius. Am I correct in saying so?
That's right, yeah. Neil Gaiman had he'd been approached on a number of occasions by Vertigo about coming back and doing some Sandman, and he said he would come back if he could write a book where each of the characters got a chapter themselves, and it was a different artist that drew each chapter, and he could get his international dream team of artists, and he wanted Mobius for this Destiny story. And I think Mobius's health wasn't very good at the time, and what they needed was a short story, no more than 8 pages, and they wanted splash pages or a splash page with just one inset panel. So Neil wrote this lovely, short, poetic story, and the way things worked out, Mobius wasn't well enough to do it, and they needed to find somebody else.
Oh, wow.
And they asked me, and they told me that I could paint it if I wanted to, which was actually one of the. I mean, I was keen to work on a Sandman story anyway. Because,
so is this watercolor or paint, or?
This was watercolor. Yeah.
Wow. And so you enjoy painting, like?
Oh yeah, I hadn't painted for over a decade at the time, and I was really eager to get back and try it again. So, so that was part of the selling point. I had read a number of different things that Neil had written, and I was keen to work on it because Neil was writing it as well. But the fact that I was getting to paint it was one of the big selling points for me.
And like, I mean, getting to work on a script that Mobius would have worked on is like, it doesn't get any hot. If they think you're good enough to work on a Mobius script, it's like, take your wins when you can get them. But yeah, getting to work on like something like this. So did you feel like, I mean, I don't know if pressure would be the right word, like coming back to pressure, but like getting to work on a script that maybe Mobius was meant to do, did you feel like, oh, well, I kind of really want to do a good job here? Did you feel that at all? Or?
No, I feel like I want to do a good job on everything. It's a personal pride thing. And I don't remember giving much thought to the fact that Mobius might have been drawing it, because the fact is that he wasn't. I mean, any script you ever get, you could imagine your top 10 favorite artists drawing it, and that could either inspire you to do your very best, or it could make you think, you know what, I'm not going to be as good as any of the 10 of them, and not bother doing it. So it wasn't something I particularly thought about. I just got a script, and I loved the script that I got.
Yeah, it's like, it's beautiful. Is it 8 pages?
It's 8 pages, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And so who are some of your artistic inspiration or artistic heroes?
Mobius is one of them.
Oh, yeah.
The Scottish artist Dudley Watkins, who drew the Bruins and Our Willie, is another one. John Buscema, who did a lot of Conan, is another one. Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby, I like a lot. Mort Drucker and Jack Davis from Mad Magazine. When I was doing Electric Soup, I was very impressed with Frank Miller, Jeff Darrow.
Oh yeah, big names
Neil
there.
Gaiman, Mike Mignola, Milo Manara, Michelangelo Prado, Will Eisner. I mean, it's a huge list. It really is it's a big list. There's so many artists that have
go on for days just about comics in general. Yeah, absolutely. And so so getting touched on Sandman, and now before we finish up, because I already took him so much of your time, I really do apologize. Let's touch on All-Star Superman, which is, I think, one of my favorite comic books of all time, and like one of the best comic books of all time, I think it's fair to say. How did this project come about to you? How did All-Star Superman fall on your lap?
Grant got in touch and said, I'm going to do this Superman thing, and I want you to draw it. And we had just done WE3 together.
Oh yeah.
And WE3 was our own character, and I wanted to do more things that were our characters. I didn't want to do another company-owned book. And Grant was like, no, you need to do this. He's like, and he said, like, this is my love letter to Superman. It's 12 issues, and it's everything I want to say about Superman. And the 12 issues are standalone stories, and they go together to make one bigger story. And I was just like, and he started telling me the broad outline for it, and it actually sounded really good. And he sent me the first script, and I was just like, wow, this is perfect. And every script I got after that was just dynamite. I couldn't believe how good it was.
Yeah.
And it was just a pleasure and a privilege to work on it. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and so let me ask you, what does Superman mean to you? Because I asked this of all my Superman guests, but what is the character of Superman to you?
He's kind of like the universal dad. He's like the archetypal good dad,
Yeah.
Yeah. He's I mean, my memories of Superman go back to the Super Friends annual that I had when I was in primary school, and that was mostly Kurt Swan Superman, and there's a simplicity and a goodness to the character that is it's fairly unique insofar as I think Superman's goodness is possibly the core of the character. And I'm not sure how many other characters you could come up with after Superman had been invented, where goodness was their main selling point, And for good reason, you don't need another 10 Superman knockoffs. It's good that Batman is, like, in some ways the polar opposite, and Flash is very different again, and Spider-Man and the Hulk and the X-Men are all very, very different. But I think Superman's goodness is probably it's his defining quality.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that take on Superman. I think that, like, when I think Superman, I think of your art, and I think of your run with Grant. Like, my Twitter, like the heading of my Twitter is one of your Superman pages. And so for the first page here, we can see here, like, Superman is flying over. Is that some type of building or castle? Like, I assume this would be a real building. Am I correct in saying so?
Yeah, that's Kelvin Grove Art Gallery and Museum, and it's in Glasgow, and that's where we had the big exhibition.
Do you love drawing architecture, or is it really annoying? What are you you'd be a great architect, actually, looking at that now.
Well, it's I don't mind drawing architecture. I don't want to draw too much of it, but I'll draw it if I have to.
If your hand is forced. Now, this page here, I think, is probably the best Superman page of all time. I always see people say, what's the number one comic book page of all time? And I brought this up with Grant, but this page actually saved lives. Like, this stopped people, from, committing suicide and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's probably the highest compliment you can get as an artist, to know something you drew saved people. Like,
yeah, I don't know of many other jobs that you could do where you would, after you've done the job, you would meet people who would come up to you and say in all sincerity, like, you saved my life, or you changed my life, or whatever. And I've met people at cons who've come up with tears in their eyes and told me what this page meant to me, what it meant to them, and what they were going through at the time when they read it. And it's really, really, it's really humbling to have been part of a story like this that has had such an effect on some people. It's just a lovely moment in a fictional story. And if for most people who aren't at their lowest ebb when they read it. It's just a nice moment in a good story. But for some people, if you're in a place that echoes this scene, you know, and you read that and it means something to you, I mean, it's a powerful thing, the way fiction can work in people's real lives, and it's a particular privilege for me to have met some of the people that have been touched by this, you know. And I've read a lot of things online about people who have been in a difficult place, and this story and this part of the story in particular has really touched them. But as I say, I've actually met some people in person. I have a couple of letters in my possession that people have written to me, and
like the Superman page to save lives. I mean, that's
yeah. I mean, you can't just shrug that stuff off.
No, absolutely.
It's a total privilege to have been involved in that. Yeah, definitely.
And so, yeah, just another thing, the last thing I want to touch on Superman is I saw this a couple of years ago on Twitter. It was this thing where someone said, Frank Quietly, who you were just named to me, this artist who, you know, made Clark and Superman two different characters, because you'd have Clark slouch in some panels, kind of look like kind of, you know, wider and stuff. So is that actually something you did to kind of make Clark and Superman look like two different people?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, I think every actor who's approached the role in film and television has tried to do the same thing with their body and their body language. And certainly when Grant and I got together to talk about working on this project, we were both, much to each other's amusement, we were both folding ourselves up to look humble and self-conscious, and puffing ourselves up.
You had to hide your muscles while using it for reference.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, everybody can do it. Everybody can assume a kind of heroic pose and a kind of closed defensive pose, and in any single person doing those two poses, you know, you're representing different ends of a spectrum. And as I say, Grant and I had a great laugh working this stuff out together when we were talking about it, and I experimented a lot with drawing the character in different ways so that Clark and Superman would look different. But it's not something unique to the way I've done it. You know,
yeah.
I'm delighted that it's a lot of people have picked up on it. You know, of course, but it's kind of one of the keys to making the Clark Superman dynamic work, is getting that kind of difference in body language and behavior, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And so my last question regarding Superman, outside underwear or no? Just there's a lot of controversy around this. What do you think? Should Superman wear his underwear on the outside, or should it just be not there? What do you think?
I think for Superman, he has to have his underwear on the outside. Yeah,
that's definitive. We can end the interview now. That's all people have to know. You know, I mean, is it fair to say you're the president of Superman? Technically. So if you say it, it goes. I mean, yeah, but I mean, of course, you base Superman upon yourself as well, which I think is fundamental. And so, yeah, this is one of my favorite comic book pages of all time. If only we could all take our dog to the moon. But Crypto isn't in robot armor. So is it the same as WE3? You know, maybe we'll get him in robot armor soon enough. But like, so what's wrong, Superman? You know, because what I love about your Superman is that he's not like, sometimes he's not all posed up trying to act brilliant. He's just kind of kind and humble. And I kind of get that. So what's your approach to drawing a character like Superman?
Well, that was just it. He was, obviously he has the general physical physique of a superhero, of the first superhero. But Grant's touched on it a number of times in interviews when he's talked about the inspiration for the Superman that he wrote. And It's the idea that if you're invulnerable, you wouldn't be puffing yourself up to make yourself look strong or aggressive or whatever. You would be completely relaxed and completely open and completely welcoming. So that was the key to the approach that Grant used in the writing and that I used in the art.
And so you actually wore a cape just for reference?
Of course.
You were wearing a cape anyway. What am I saying? You were just wearing it while you draw.
I've got my underpants outside just now, which is why I'm not standing up.
Don't show us, okay? Come on, we need to keep this PG, And of course, you're wearing a cape right now. You're just hiding it very, very well. It's kind of just draping back a little bit. But yeah, absolutely. One of the last comics I want to touch on coming off All-Star Superman is the Batman. I added Death because I think it makes it sound so much more prestigious, the Batman. And so yeah, I'm going to commend myself on that. And you almost applaud me right now, the Batman. Can you see what I'm saying? Doesn't that sound a bit more prestigious?
It sure does.
What can I say? I'm just so incredibly professional. But you got to work on, Batman and Robin for the first 3 issues, I believe it was. With Grant, and this is like this image I love so much. It's been shared around so much. But this version of Batman is interesting because it's Bruce. It's not Bruce Wayne. It's actually Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne as Batman and Robin. So did you try and make your Batman look different? Maybe not as burly, make it look like Nightwing as Batman, or did you just try and do?
Yeah, I mean he's slightly more like Nightwing in terms of his age and physique, for sure. Yeah,
and we can kind of see the cover process here. Go from original. Was this the original drawing, or did you just redraw it for DC to do the redrawn thing?
My original drawings were little scribbly thumbnails. This was a digital underdrawing that I did, which I then printed out in light blue and then drew on top of that with pencil for the final artwork, which is scanned and coloured in the subsequent 2 images there.
And some more fantastic pages. I recently saw something on Twitter where someone asked, what's a really good car chase you've seen? Because I know a lot of artists who just can't do car chases. And so many people are putting in these pages because I think it is one of the best car chases to ever exist in a comic. It's just so good. I never thought I wanted to see someone like a frog creature run away from Batman, but I'm grateful we have it. But yeah, so getting to draw car chases, is that hard for you? Was that hard for you in these few panels? Because this just looks so, like, there's such a fluidity to it. I think it's fantastic.
It's not especially hard. It just requires a bit of thought and a bit of time.
Yeah. And so, my last is this hard to draw question. And I know a lot of artists say, I can't draw horses, or I can't draw bridges or something, or I can't draw buildings. Is there that one thing that you just can't draw, but you're just keeping it very, you're just very secretly hiding it? Or no, you can probably draw everything, actually. Is there anything you can't draw?
If there was something I couldn't draw, I wouldn't tell you, because
that's fair. Because
the next time I work with either Grant or Mark, they're going to fill the script with whatever it is I say I can't draw.
Yeah. Once I interview Mark someday, I'm going to tell him everything about you. I'm just going to say, oh yeah, he hates this. He doesn't want to do this. He loves this. And I'm going to say, yeah, just stuff like that, and just add it all in. He says, just put in loads of skinny characters or like these big fat characters, he won't be able to draw them because of his hulking muscles. Like, he just looks at himself. So we've damned you there. But yeah, absolutely, getting to work on this with Grant, I think, is fantastic. And so you got to do the first 3 issues, but was it kind of a childhood dream getting to work on Batman and something as prestigious as this? Because I know you said in a few interviews that you could tell people you worked on Batman and they'd know what you're talking about. So was that kind of it for you getting to work on Batman?
The kind of kudos of working on Batman, I kind of got that the first time I did it with the Scottish Connection. Working on Batman this time with Grant, with Batman and Robin, part of what appealed to me about it was the fact that it was Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne. Yeah. So it was a different dynamic from the Batman and Robin we'd seen before, where Batman's serious and Robin's the kind of comedy relief. And it was almost the other way around, where young Damian was serious and earnest and arrogant, and Dick Grayson as Batman was, on the one hand, he's a much lighter personality, but he was also trying to rise to the challenge of being a role model. Yeah. And basically trying to teach Damian how to be a better person. And I really liked that aspect of it. But I also liked rather more superficially, I liked the idea of these circus freaks, where you had these three guys that were joined at the shoulder blades, so the three of them tumbled around like a crab or something, and there was the bearded lady and Professor Pig and all these other kind of sideshow characters, which really appealed to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So fight scenes here. How fun is it if you get to do fight scenes, especially on a character like Batman? Do you get to choreograph them, or is it just fun if you get to do fight scenes?
Yeah, I get to choreograph them. Generally speaking, with most writers, the writer will kind of talk you through what they want with the fight scene.
Yeah.
But there's still a fair amount of choreography that has to go on, from choosing the angles to choosing which images you're actually showing and how they relate to each other in a sequence. So it's one of the pleasures of working on a book with action sequences.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I love how you can do something like WE3, which is this really emotional and terrific, like just sad book, a lot of it. And then you can also do a book where a character says, oink, oinkity, oinkity, oink. Beautiful. Brings a tear to my eye. Yeah, getting to do Professor Pig, who I used to play the Arkham games and I pretend with my friends on the yard that we were the Arkham characters, and Pig was the most terrifying character I've ever had to go against. He's so scary for young Daniel to go like, I'm not fighting this pig guy, from surgery on people. But yeah, what was it like getting to draw Professor Pig?
He's a pretty creepy guy.
He is absolutely a pretty creepy guy. Do you get to do the design for him?
Yeah, well, this was really simple. Grant had done thumbnail designs for most of the characters, but not Pig. And I actually said to him, you've not given me a Professor Pig thumbnail to start with. And he said, oh, Professor Pig's just Henry Higgins with a pig mask and a butcher's apron. And Henry Higgins was the character from My Fair Lady, the posh guy who took the flower girl and tried to teach her how to be a kind of high class lady. So it was Rex Harrington was the actor, but it was just the butcher's apron and the pig mask. I did one simple sketch and sent it to Grant. It was like, yeah, that's it.
He's so creepy. He's just so creepy and weird looking. I love him though. I think he's brilliant. And so yeah, getting to see him in the Arkham games, the character you co-create, what's that like?
Well, I don't play games, but I've got a couple of, I've got 3 kids who all play games, and so a few years ago when it came out, my sons were playing it, and they were like, Dad, look, there's Professor Pig, and I was like, oh yeah. And so that was kind of nice. Yeah,
like he has his mother's eyes. He looks exactly like me. It's perfect. Yeah, absolutely. And so getting to work on Batman, I think your work on Batman is still fantastic. And I look back and I just think, what a great book. But yeah, so the second last comic I'm going to touch on, I can assure you the end is near. I'm sorry for taking up so much of your time, is Jupiter's Legacy. I think this is such a great book. I love it so much. It's one of my favorite comic books of all time, and it's recently adapted into a Netflix show. But so how did Jupiter's Legacy come about? Because this is like, you've worked with Mark before, but did he come to you with this?
Yeah, Mark got in touch with me about doing something together, and I told him that I didn't want to do another team book. I wanted
yeah, that didn't work out, did it?
Yeah, I wanted to do a creator-owned thing, and I wanted it to be a single character, and he was like, no, I've got the thing that's perfect for you, and it's a team book, and it's got a cast of hundreds. And you
were like, yeah.
He just started talking about what it was he wanted to do with it, and the more he talked, the more I thought, yeah, I could do that, and that's how we get started on it. So
yeah, brilliant. And I think the world is a better place for it. But you got to do the character design for these characters as well, did you?
Yeah, I mean, like from what you're showing here, like the guy top left, Utopian, is he's kind of first generation superheroes from the 1930s with the chest emblem and the cape.
Yes, and then there's like Hutch at
and
the bottom.
then top right and bottom left, like, are slightly more modern versions of the superhero suit. The guy in the bottom middle has also got an anorak on, and then the guy bottom right is from my mindset of, if you've got superpowers, you wouldn't be wearing a stupid costume.
And then above you is Grant in the utopian suit.
That's it. Yeah.
It's perfect. But yeah, there's some more fantastic pages there. But on Jupiter Legacy, I especially love these pages there where we can see the action sequences and all the superheroes piling on top of Black Star. And so you said, I don't want to do a team book. And then look, here we are showing this panel where about 100 superheroes are jumping on one person. So goes to show. I think looking back, Jupiter's Legacy is still a fantastic book. So he certainly got lucky there. And like just the middle page where it's like he's jumping out of the panel, moving from panel to panel and sticking out. Was that written in the script?
Not in any detail. To be honest, I can't actually remember exactly how Mark described it, but I worked out a couple of different ways of doing it, and this was the way that seemed to be working best for me, and Mark liked it. So
yeah. And what was it like getting to see Jupiter's Legacy adapted into a Netflix TV show? Was that kind of like sick?
Yeah, that was really exciting. We got all the family around, and we all crammed into a room together and watched the first episode. Wow. I got sent a code to watch the first episode just a couple of days.
A code
in advance. Yeah. So
did you type the code into Netflix?
Yeah, they give you a special code so you can watch. They gave the code to a bunch of like reviewers, and so that there was some like reviews out just for when it was going to launch, and so we saw it. We just the first episode we saw like 2 or 3 days before it dropped, and it was good. We got some champagne and some popcorn, and we all sat together, like must have been about 15 or 20 of us crammed in together to one room.
Perfect way to celebrate getting to watch Jupiter's Legacy as a family. And
yeah, it was really good.
One of my favorite pages here, and I know this page has brought up a lot in terms of you being an artist. But what was this page like, getting to draw that specific page?
The character in the top is he's got psychic abilities where he can trap people in an imaginary environment that they think is real.
Yeah.
And Mark said he uses memory and imagination to build these environments, and I used memory and imagination to draw the pages. So I thought using my process of non-repro blue pencil drawings and loose pencil sketches and then tighter pencil sketches and then inks and then colors, I thought if I showed that process forming a kind of cube or cell in the middle, that would help the reader understand how this projection has been put together. So
yeah, definitely. I think that's a really great page there, Bo. So who was your favorite character from Jupiter's Legacy that you got to work on, and why was it Skyfox? What was it about that character that you just loved? Who
it was Skyfox, funnily enough.
Was it really Skyfox?
Well, actually, it was Uncle Walter, this evil guy in the top here, and Skyfox. And Uncle Walter was great because he's just bad. He's just bad and ambitious. And Skyfox is great because he took himself away from everybody else and did his own thing. And
that image of him with the cigarette, like, let's just kick the crap out of him, is one of my favorite comic book images of all time.
Yeah, I mean, he is just the archetypal I'll do it my way type of character.
Yeah.
Both characters, I mean, in a cast of very strong characters, those two were the ones that kind of stood out the most for me.
Absolutely. And so the last and final comic book I want to touch on, I've literally taken up your whole year, all of 2022, but still we'll finish up here. It's Pax Americana. You got to work on this with Grant again, and I love this series. It's such a fantastic book. What was it like getting to work on Pax Americana?
It was it's great now looking back on it, but at the time it was pretty difficult.
Oh yeah, you mentioned in your in right here in your Frank Whiteley art plus sketches, which everyone can go pick up from BHP Comics. If I can find a link, there will be one in the description, conveniently enough. But yeah, so what was like Pax American? Was that actually a difficult time for you?
Yeah, it was. Grant had written this as a kind of mini Watchmen or a pocket Watchmen, and he wrote the script in a much denser, more prescriptive way than usual, much more of an Alan Moore style script, and so there was a lot of description about what he wanted. He was very specific about what he wanted in the visuals. He also showed me thumbnails for a lot of the pages, the way he wanted them laid out, which sounds like it should have saved me time, but in some instances it actually made it a longer process for me. And also Grant was very busy with other projects, so he was giving me pages just a few at a time, which meant that I didn't have the luxury of knowing what was coming up next in future scenes, which sometimes affects the way you do things earlier in the book. If you know you're going to go back and see a scene again or whatever, but so it was actually. For a number of reasons, it was actually quite a difficult book to work on. But now that it's done, and it's a few years in the past, and I'm not exhausted from working on it anymore. I can look back on it with some degree of pleasure now.
Yeah, you drew Peacemaker before it was cool, because now he's such a big character. There you go.
Yeah, well, I didn't know Peacemaker before I actually drew this book.
I don't blame you. I don't think I don't think it's exactly a fan favorite, but these middle panels going across where Peacemaker's jumping over, what was your process for that? Because that's such a brilliant page there. This brilliant double. What was your process for this specific type of scene?
I read the script, and Grant had a description of this where he wanted it split over 8 panels, and he wanted the helicopter in the background moving in a kind of S-shaped curve, and he wanted Peacemaker moving through the soldiers or security guards, knocking them out. Beyond that, I think there wasn't a great deal of description. It was just a question of me choreographing the action in such a way that I felt it flowed well.
Yeah. And so I think panelly came up with like just some fantastic panels here, especially in this book. So did you meet up with Grant again to discuss some specific pages and scenes in this book?
Yeah. Grant and I got together a number of occasions when we were working on this, and quite, I don't know, I'd maybe more than half the pages, Grant actually showed me his thumbnail layouts for the pages, and he does thumbnail layouts for all the pages that he writes, but he never normally shows them to me. And with this, he actually showed me some of the thumbnails and said, listen, I want it kind of like this. And when he said I want it kind of like this, I got the impression he meant I want it really quite like this.
Or your family will suffer if you don't get
yeah.
And I love this first page here of them walking down the stairs, and it's all in different panels. So good. And like your panel works fun. And look at this last page here. That must be, there are a million panels there. That's fair to say, isn't it? Million panels.
There's a lot, yeah. That took ages.
How do you sleep? That's just a question. Do you sleep? You just hang upside down in your cave?
Not long enough. That's what I think.
Absolutely. And so this is another fantastic page. And so let me ask you, do you work closely with the colorist on your books? Because you can see here that's like morning, night, day, and stuff like that. So do you work, closely with your, your colorist on these types of books?
Yeah, the colorist in this was Nathan Fairbairn.
Oh yeah, brilliant colorist.
And he did an amazing job. And he put in such a lot of work. Obviously between the script that Grant had written and the color notes that I gave. He had plenty to go on. It wasn't like he was left just to do his own thing. But if you'd given this coloring job to 10 different colorists, I think you'd be hard pushed to get something better than what Nathan came up with.
Yeah, absolutely. And like just some more brilliant pages here, and just getting to work on all these like different characters. And so Pax Americana, still looking back, like even though it took so much time, are you proud of the book? Because you got to draw characters like what Question, Peacemaker. I think was Ted Cord in that book. Am I correct in saying so?
Can't remember. edit this bit out.
Yeah. Yes. Was it fun for you getting to work on that book?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, it was a lot of work, but I could see it coming together as I was working on it. I could see where it was going, even though I didn't have the full script at any one time. So it was very satisfying.
And so we have finally cleared through all the comics. We're at an end. The last thing I want to start on is your cover work. The first one we have here, a granny zombie. Let me ask you, I've been thinking about this so much and I just can't stop thinking about what made you say you should do a granny zombie? I love it so much. But what made you think there has to be a granny zombie?
This was one of the rare occasions where I was cutting corners, and I was asked to do a Walking Dead cover, and it was for an anniversary, and the TV show was already really big at the time, and I knew that they were getting lots and lots of different artists to do covers, and I thought everybody's going to be doing the actors from the TV show, and that's going to take ages to try and get a likeness. So, I just started drawing zombies, and for some reason I ended up drawing like old lady zombies. And
a granny zombie out of laziness. That's my favorite story. That's going to be the heading for this interview.
And I thought, you know what? Why don't we just have a granny zombie? And that's what I went with.
And the world is a better place for it. And so The Edge Off and Killtopia are two fantastic independent books. Well, I mean, good enough books. And so you got to do covers for these. They're both fantastic books. And so getting to do covers, how is it fun for you to get to do covers? Do you enjoy doing covers?
Yeah.
You're great at them. And
thank you.
Yeah.
These are a couple of Scottish independent comics, and I know the writers and artists involved, and it's just this. It's really nice. One of the nice things about doing an alternate cover is that you don't actually have to carry the full story, or you don't have to work with the main character, or you don't have to, the pressure's off. You can kind of do what you want with an alternate cover, and both of these examples are just me reading a script or seeing an issue and thinking, oh, I could do a cover like this.
Yeah, and one of my favorite covers you got to, I don't have it here, but it's for Happy. Didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
I was sitting down reading it because I just finished interviewing Grant and I was in town. And I was like, looking, can I get Happy? And it's like, it's about unicorn. How bad can it be? And of course, I love the book. It's fantastic. One of the most glorious things I've ever read. And at the end, and I never thought you would do such a great job drawing a blue unicorn, but there you go. I mean, not to be all sentimental, but you're so good at drawing old granny zombies and blue unicorns. Sorry, I'm just full of compliments today.
I'm a clever guy.
No, you do a brilliant job. Absolutely. And so some more brilliant covers there. One by Rob Williams as well. I got the interview. And so, yeah, absolutely. This recent Penguin one, which I loved. I saw it posted on Twitter and I saw it in shops and I picked it up and I was like, oh, it'd be so cool if I could interview Frank one day. And then once I finally found enough blackmail, I went up to him and he said, yeah, he'd be happy to do it. And he might get his family back if he plays his cards right for the last few minutes. And the Joker there as well. But yeah, getting to do covers. Would you like to do more covers in the future? Is that something you'd like to
do? I really enjoy doing covers because it's a short commitment, and I usually get the opportunity to either do it in black and white or do digital color or do color on paper. Like so the Penguin and the Green Lantern covers are both digital coloring. The Joker in the middle is that's a watercolor.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have the freedom to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my last and final question before I let you go, what advice would you have for anyone looking to get into comic books? Drugs, maybe?
Oh, I think the main thing is do everything you can to get better at what you do. So I mean the main skill set you need for drawing comics, not surprisingly, is drawing skills. And you can get fairly far by sourcing photographic reference and copying it.
Yeah.
But there's no photographic reference available when you're asked to draw something imaginary from another dimension that isn't currently on the internet. You need to be able to draw in your imagination. And there's no substitute for being able to draw things in a sequence, which isn't easy to do if you're relying on photographic reference. So simply learning how to draw properly is a really obvious but really big thing. Drawing all the time, constantly trying to get better, not doing a half-assed job because you're doing it for free or because you don't have much time or because the page rate isn't good. Everything you draw is a business card for your work. It's an example to other people of what you're actually capable of. So it's worth doing the best you can, like relative to the stage you're at,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just constantly keep trying to do your best work all the time, no matter what you're working on.
Yeah, I could not have put it better myself. Frank, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I'll talk to you a little bit off air. Before we finish up, are you on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that?
I have Instagram and Twitter, and I post something once a month, once every 2 months. I'm useless with it. I cannot be bothered with social media.
I definitely don't blame you. Do you have anything you'd like to promote? Any new comics or any things you'd like to talk about?
No, I'm working on something just now I can't talk about, but I hope it's going to be out this year.
Brilliant. I look forward to that. I'll talk to you a little bit off air. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. I realized I never shout out my shirt. I guess from Paul Trimble, it's the Carlos and Square Memorial. Everyone can go check out Enniskillen Comic Fest and Omagh Comic Fest on Facebook. Yeah, but before we finish up, if you'd be so kind, just follow me over on Twitter at SamboGizmo1, where you can see Frank Quitely's, art as my bio, his Superman page. So if that doesn't inspire you to follow me, I don't know what will. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, if you have the means, please make sure to donate to the National Deaf Children's Society. There'll be a link for that in the description. And of course, we brought it up earlier, the Yorkhill Children's Foundation. I'll be linking that down as well. Go check out all of Frank's work and go read all of his comics so we can buy him a new car and maybe get his family back. Believe it or not, I don't think his family's actually been kidnapped by Grant Morrison, but that's just a big thing. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. And Frank, thank you so much for coming on. I will see you on in the next video. But yeah, stay safe, everyone, and Merry Christmas.